Here's the part nobody talks about. US manufacturing is actually growing again. Yep, quietly, steadily faster than most people think. Since 2021, companies have announced record reshoring, tens of thousands of jobs, pulling production back from overseas and closer to customers. You can see it on the map. Arizona, chip plant construction. Texas, chip plant construction. Ohio, chip plant construction. Chips aren't just for phones, they're for national security. Tennessee, EV and battery megafactory. Georgia, EV and battery megafactory. Michigan, EV and battery megafactory. Building the supply chain for the next decade: cars, trucks, grid storage. Why now? First, costs. China's labor isn't dirt cheap anymore. Add shipping, delays, and risk. US production starts to look competitive again. Second, automation, robots, computer vision, AI scheduling. Today, a few highly skilled workers can run lines that used to need dozens. That flips the math. There's another tailwind: nearshoring to Mexico. When parts cross the border in hours, not weeks, US factories get faster, leaner, and more resilient. The neighborhood supply chain wins. And this isn't just about gadgets, chips, steel, energy tech, powering data centers, powering homes, powering EVs. It's industrial policy meeting market momentum. And it's working. But let's be real, the job's not done. We need more skilled workers, faster permitting, smoother grid connections, keep scaling automation, keep incentives targeted so plants actually break ground, not just make headlines. Here's the takeaway. The comeback is on. If we keep pushing, training people, building smarter, owning the tech stack, not nostalgia, not slogans, just making things faster, closer, stronger, because the world still needs what America makes, especially when America decides to make it here. After losing millions of jobs, America finally pushed back. For decades, factories shuttered, towns hollowed out, boardrooms cheered, quarterly gains shipped overseas. Cheap got cheaper. But sovereignty? That got expensive. By the 2010s, something snapped. People were fed up watching plants move to Mexico, plants move to China, while Washington shrugged. The idea was simple. If you don't make it, you don't control it. Then came the shock. Tariffs on steel, tariffs on aluminum, tariffs on waves of Chinese imports. Ports jammed, prices spiked. Companies had to rethink the whole map. Designed here, built there. Tech giants felt the heat. Politicians and the public said, bring the critical jobs back. Not every job. Start with the ones that keep a nation secure. And then COVID hit. Empty shelves, masks rationed, medicine delayed, chips, those tiny brains inside everything, now a national headache. It wasn't just economics anymore, it was security. That's when the ground shifted. For the first time in 40 years, reshoring wasn't a fringe idea. It was bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans arguing on TV, sure, but quietly aligning. America had to regain control of its supply lines. New incentives rolled out. Chip fabs broke ground on US soil. Defense contracts favored domestic steel. The message to boardrooms was clear. Efficiency isn't king, resilience is. This is the backlash. Not nostalgia for the past, but a bet on sovereignty. Make what matters here. Control what keeps you free. Because prosperity without power is fragile. And a nation that can't build what it needs, when it needs it, isn't truly in charge. America learned the hard way. Now it's pushing back, onshoring, friendshoring, rewriting the rules to put security first, not isolation, independence. That's the point. That's the fight. China didn't steal American manufacturing. America handed it over. That sounds harsh, but here's the context. In 2001, China joins the World Trade Organization. Game changer. Overnight, the world's biggest labor pool gets plugged straight into global trade, lower tariffs, clearer rules, massive certainty for investors. US corporations do the math. Ultra-cheap labor scale. On-demand governments willing to move mountains, literally, to build for you. If you're a CEO with shareholders yelling cut costs, you don't build a factory in Ohio. You get on a plane to Shenzhen. Offshoring becomes the default strategy. Textiles, toys, furniture, electronics, autos, steel, solar. The iPhone isn't made in China because of one part, it's because the entire supply web lives there. Screws, glass chips, tooling, people who can retool overnight. China builds factory cities, dorms next to assembly lines, ports that swallow container ships, high-speed rail to move people, expressways to move parts. If a company needs 10,000 workers by Monday, they show up by Monday. Meanwhile, America optimizes for margins. Just in time becomes just not here. We shutter plants, lose know-how, import the muscle memory of making things. Then the bill arrives. Tariffs hit. A pandemic chokes ports. A chip shortage stalls cars. Suddenly, efficiency looks like dependency. Here's the twist. China didn't just offer cheap hands. It offered a strategy. Train engineers, subsidize key industries, lock in ports, lock in power, lock in steel, reward scale. While the US outsourced, China stacked capabilities until the world's supply chains tilted their way. So when you ask, why did America hand it over? Because the spreadsheet said yes, quarter after quarter. And because China built the full stack of manufacturing faster than anyone else. If the goal is resilience, the fix isn't a slogan. It's rebuilding capacity, incentives. The hard, unsexy craft of making things close to home. Otherwise, the default stays America used to build everything. Then, almost overnight, the factories went dark. Let's rewind. After World War II, the US was the world's factory floor. Detroit churned out cars, Pittsburgh poured steel, Cleveland stamped parts, Buffalo moved it all. Wages rose, unions won real benefits, a single paycheck could buy a house, a car, a vacation. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. Then the 1970s hit. Oil shocks sent energy prices soaring. Inflation ate paychecks. Unions clashed with corporations over costs and automation. Productivity stalled, competition grew, and the math got ugly. Companies looked for a way out. First, it was just across the border, Mexico's maquiladoras. Cheaper labor, looser rules, quick trucking back to the US. Then the container ship and just-in-time logistics unlocked the world. Japan, the Tigers, China, offered scale and speed at a fraction of the price. By the 1990s, offshoring wasn't a bet. It was the business model. The map of America changed. Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Buffalo lost not just factories, but purpose. Plants shuttered, tax bases collapsed, main streets hollowed out. The best jobs for people without college degrees evaporated. What followed wasn't just unemployment, it was a social shockwave. Family strain, brain drain, rising deaths of despair. You can draw a line from closed plants to today's opioid crisis, pain filling the void where stable work used to be. Could this have gone differently? Some places reinvested, advanced manufacturing, training, infrastructure. Others got left behind by policy choices, corporate incentives, our hunger for cheap goods. Here's the simple timeline. Post-war boom, 70s shocks, offshoring wave, Rust Belt collapse, community fallout. Factories didn't vanish overnight, but for millions, it felt that way. And until we rebuild the ladder to good work, right here, the story of that fall keeps repeating. So the question isn't just what happened, it's what do we decide to build next?